Welcome to my channel. I've been asked to react to the PTSD special recording of I Was Only 19 by John Schumann. This is not the same as the Red Gum version that I did earlier. So I'm going to do that now, but before I do that, I have to thank you for coming from all over the world to my channel over and over again to watch my videos. Thank you for the support. Thank you for the love. Thank you for the wonderful comments that you make. And thank you for making my channel blow up. It's just amazing to me. And as I do with every artist that I feature on my channel, I will go to their YouTube channel and get the links and put them into the description of my video. So if you'll click on the More link on the description of my video, you'll see all those links. And what I ask you to do is to subscribe to the channels of those artists that you support and follow them on their social media channels. And if you want, buy their music. So this is the PTSD special recording of I Was Only 19 by John Schumann.
I'm sorry I can't be there with you tonight. When I wrote I Was Only 19, I was simply telling the story of my brother-in-law Mick Storen. Mick was deployed to Vietnam in 1969 and he'd been involved in a very serious mine incident in the Long Hai Hills. Our Vietnam veterans came home to a bitterly divided society and they fell into the cracks. As opposed to the well-meant inquiries, commissions and parliamentary committees, in 4 minutes 19 seconds, I Was Only 19 enabled ordinary Australians to walk in the shoes and look out of the eyes of our Vietnam veterans. It stopped all of us in our tracks. We Australians are fundamentally decent and fair, and once we got it, we all look back in shame at how we treated our Vietnam veterans. I don't think we'll make that mistake again. What I didn't realise until much later is that I Was Only 19 is a sort of quickly understandable dissertation on post-traumatic stress disorder, as well as the effects of herbicides and insecticides on our Vietnam veterans. A few years ago, I scripted and narrated a DVD for the Army on post-traumatic stress disorder. It was designed for soldiers pre- and post-deployment. I interviewed a wide range of veterans from Vietnam, East Timor, Somalia, Rwanda, Iraq and Afghanistan. And like Mick Storen, all these blokes had the courage to tell their PTSD stories so that their other comrades wouldn't have to suffer alone for years like they did. One of the most arresting stories I was told came from a Vietnam veteran. When he demobbed, he tried to slip back into his life in rural Queensland. He wasn't having a very good time. He had rashes that came and went, but his doctor told him they were due to his wife using too much detergent when she washed his clothes. His toenails fell out, but his doctor told him it was athlete's foot. He suffered from insomnia, but his doctor told him he was drinking too much coffee. When he heard 19 for the first time, he told me he was driving on a country Queensland road. He pulled over onto the verge and listened to the song, and then he cried. And after he dried his eyes, he told me his first thought was, those bastards have been lying to me. Because clearly, if some bloke could write a song that spoke directly to his heart and his experience, he was not the only one. He sought out other vets and found there were veteran support groups scattered all over the place, loose, unstructured, but all determined to fight for justice and a voice. It was the start of a movement. I Was Only 19 has lasted so long because, among other things, it speaks the truth about PTSD. It sets it in a real-life context. What I've learned about PTSD is this: it doesn't mean you're soft, it means you're human. Armed combat is the highest form of public service. When Australian serving men and women come home from whatever conflict our government sends them to, we owe them and their families all the help and support that we can possibly give them. They didn't count the cost, and neither should we. We honour our veterans, and we must stand beside them when they face the difficult challenges of coming home, so often bringing with them psychological as well as physical injuries. Oh, and one last thing. Don't let anyone ever tell you that songs can't change the world. Mum and Dad and Denny saw the passing out parade at Puckapunyal. It was a long march from cadets.
Hi, I'm Sam Jordan, Director of Humanitarian Action
that's
for the
perfect
International
timing.
Rescue Committee. Conflict and constraints on
And the 6th Battalion was the next to tour. It was me who drew the card. We did Canungra, Shoalwater before we left. And Townsville lined the footpaths as we marched down to the quay. This clipping from the papers shows us young and strong and clean. And there's me in me slouch hat with me SLR and greens. God help me, I was only 19. From Huntout, riding Chinooks, to the dust at Newey Dat, I'd been in and out of choppers now for months. And we made our tents a home VB and pen-ups on the loggers, and an Asian orange sunset through the scrub. And can you tell me, doctor, why I still can't get to sleep? Nighttime, just a jungle dart and a barking M16. What's this rash that comes and goes? Can you tell me what it means? God help me, I was only 19. A 4-week operation when each step could mean your last one on 2 legs. It was a war within yourself, but you wouldn't let your mates down till they had you dusted off. So you close your eyes and you thought about something else. And then someone yelled out, "Contact front!" and the bloke behind me swore. We pushed in there for hours, then it got almighty raw. Frankie kicked a mine the day that mankind kicked the moon. God help me, he was going home in June. I can still see Frankie drinking tinnies in the Grand Hotel on a 36-hour rec leave in Vung Tau. I can still hear Frankie lying screaming in the jungle till the morphine came and killed the bloody row. And the Anzac legends didn't mention Martin, blood and tears, and the stories my father told me never seemed quite real. And I caught some pieces in the back that I didn't even feel. God help me, I was only 19. And can you tell me, doctor, why I still can't get to sleep? And why the Channel 7 chopper chills me to my feet? And what's this rash that comes and goes? Can you tell me what it means? God help me, I was only 19.
this is a tough subject. I think a lot of people don't really understand what PTSD is. And you can't just get PTSD from war. You can get it from a lot of things. Basically, what it is you suffer a traumatic experience. I'm talking real trauma, not some fake trauma. This is the kind of trauma that changes your life. Like people shooting at you, like people next to you being shot dead. And when you're in combat, that doesn't just happen to you one day. That happens to you over and over and over and over again. And it imprints on your mind. And then, when you are flown out of that conflict and back to civilization, it's such a stark contrast. When you're in combat, your nerves are like a hair trigger. The slightest sound will get you to stop and look. The sound of helicopters coming to get you, to pick you up and get you out of there so you're not being shot at anymore, is a memory that will stick with you for a lifetime. And all it takes is for a noise or a smell, anything that affects your five senses, whether it's something you see, something you taste, something you smell, something you hear, or something you touch. Any of those things can bring back those memories. That's what PTSD is. It's the triggering of the memories of the trauma that you went through, that you endured. And almost anything can trigger it. But the things that trigger it will be specific to the experience that you went through. So if you were in heavy combat and you smell the smell of gunpowder, any smell close to gunpowder will trigger it. If you smelled wet leaves in the jungle, that smell of wet leaves will bring it back to you. If you endured an artillery barrage, any kind of noise that would remind you of that artillery barrage will bring it back. And for some, not all, but for some who suffer from PTSD, it will bring it back in all of its glory. Their mind will actually be back in that incident, and they won't even realize that they're in the present. And there are ways to treat it, and we've gotten better. We understand more, science does now, about how to treat it. But it's a consequence of being in a situation where there's a significant amount of trauma that affects your mind in a way that you cannot control. If you're in a mass shooting in a mall, same effect. If you're in a massive car accident, same effect. Even if you're in a single vehicle car accident, if something happens, like, God forbid, a loved one dies or is seriously injured, that will trigger it. And unfortunately, the media portrays it as the people that have that problem are crazy. And they like to portray it as war makes all combat veterans crazy, which is absolute lie. It's an absolute lie. There are many combat vets that do not have PTSD. I think, if I remember correctly, the last time I looked, the figures were something like 25% suffer from PTSD. So 75% do not. So it doesn't affect everybody, but it does affect some people, and particularly when it's a very traumatic experience, like someone right next to you gets their head blown off, or you end up having to hold somebody that you really cared about, that you loved, in your arms while they bleed out. And there's lots of other things that can, traumatic experiences in war that can trigger it, besides just combat. I mean, I don't even know if I should talk about some of this stuff because it's disgusting and horrible. But just suffice it to say that PTSD is a normal human reaction to being placed into a situation where a tremendous amount of trauma confronts you, and there's nothing you can do about it at the time. You just have to go through it. You have to live through it. And so that memory is imprinted on your brain, and imprinted on your brain with that memory are all the sights, sounds, smells, touches, and tastes that you had at that moment. And any one of those 5 senses being triggered can cause that memory to come back. And as I say, with some people, complete disconnection from reality. Some people never get over it. Some people get healed. It depends a lot on the individual and what they went through. But there's nothing that irks me more than to see the citizens of a nation all gung-ho to support their troops to go to war. And then as soon as the bodies start coming home, all of a sudden they lose their taste for war and they want them out of it. And for the combat vet who's in the middle of it, the reason they're there is to defeat the enemy. And when you take that away from them, you take away their reason for living, basically. You take away their reason for being, because that's what they were there for, was to defeat the enemy. And if you take that away from them, like we did in Vietnam, like we did in Afghanistan, like other countries have done in other wars, it affects a man's soul tremendously. And regardless of what the reasoning was behind a war, what the excuses were for a war, the combat veterans aren't the ones making those decisions. They're the ones carrying them out. And so no matter what you feel about what your government has done, you should always be thankful for the men and women who have the guts to go serve and to put their lives on the line to carry out the orders of your government. Obviously, the greatest thing in the world would be to have peace and not ever have wars again. But, you know, I don't think that's possible. I really do not think it's possible. Not in the world we live in, where there are evil people. I mean, what do you do about an Adolf Hitler? You have two choices. You can either succumb to him or you can defeat him. And either way, there's going to be violence. It's just the reality of it. As long as there are evil men, there will be wars. And the best thing that we can do as peace-loving people is to maintain as strong a military force as we can to act as, hopefully, a deterrent. But that deterrent has to be backed up by determination and by the willingness to go to war if it's required to put a stop to it. And far too often, we put that off until such a time that it becomes unavoidable. And then when it becomes unavoidable, it costs many, many, many more lives to resolve the conflict. It would be nice if we could have a world where there would never be a war. And that ought to be the goal that we all work towards. But you don't end war by appeasement. You end it by strength and determination and the willingness to put your life on the line for the right beliefs. That's just my thoughts on it. The song, again, I've already heard it and talked about it, but there are things in there that he mentions that are so real, like him saying the Channel 7 helicopter every time he hears it. What he's saying is, when he was at war in Vietnam, when you hear a chopper coming, you knew that help was on the way. And that was a welcome sound. Now, for the North Vietnamese, the sound of a chopper would be a horrible sound because with it comes hell and fire and death. So, depending on the position you're in at the time, the meaning of that whoop, whoop, whoop sound can be completely different. But those are memories that are imprinted on every person who's been at war and will be with them for their entire lives. They never go away. Those memories are permanent. And as I say, all it takes is the right smell, the right touch, the right sound, the right taste, the right, excuse me, what'd I miss? Sound, touch, taste, smell, or sight. The right thing you see in your eyes. And it could be anything. It could be something completely innocuous. But all it takes is for that to trigger that memory. And then, bam, you're right back in the conflict again. And for some, complete disassociation from reality. Not all. Not by any stretch of the imagination. And remember, only 25% suffer from it at all. But for those 25%, it can be hard. It can be tough. It can be the type of thing they don't want to deal with anymore, and so they commit suicide. So we, as people of the nations that we live in, should support our military forces, the individuals who serve in it, regardless of what we think of the conflict that they were sent to, because they didn't have a choice. If they were in the military, they went. That's enough of me yapping. For you, my viewers, my lovely viewers, I pray for you. I pray that you all have an abundant life, that you'll live a long time, and that you'll be healthy, and that God will keep you safe from harm. And I pray that God will do all of those things for the people that you love, for every single person that you love. I pray most of all that you will be anxious for nothing, but in all things, through prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, you will make your requests known to God. And the peace that passes all understanding will keep your heart and mind in Christ Jesus. This is the Vietnam Era Vet, out.